Consolidations, limitations. We're talking about consolidation agriculture from the farm level all the way up to the manufacturer level. I've got a great show for you today, Perspectives from an Ag CEO on Consolidation. Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of the Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, and the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with Pattern Ag's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field, then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of the Business of Agriculture. We are talking about a topic that I'm sure you have observed. If you work in this industry, we consolidate. We get bigger. We get bigger at the farm level. We get bigger at the manufacturer level, also at the retail level, everywhere in between. From the beginning to the end, consolidation has been the rule in American agriculture. Started that way a long, long time ago. In the 1930s, we hit peak farm with about 6.8 million farms. Now we're down to less than 2 million farms. Let's face it, only about 5% of the 2 million, like 100,000 of those farms, do all the heavy lifting, producing more than 75% of all ag revenue. So we're talking about consolidation at the farm level, but also at the retail level, at the cooperative level, at the manufacturer level, all the way through the whole chain of agriculture. I've got Matt Carstens. He is a CEO for Landus. Landus is an Iowa-based ag retailer cooperative. Obviously, they've consolidated as well. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the limitations to consolidation, because here's the big overriding theme. While we always get bigger, and you can like or dislike that, it's just the reality. I mean, you can like or dislike that it rains. It's just the reality, okay? The limitation of the consolidation is that it doesn't actually create demand, it does not increase demand, and it does not increase prices. So the limitation of consolidation, overriding theme here today, dear listener, is that it creates economies of scale, but it doesn't increase demand, nor does it increase prices. So that's the limitation overriding theme. Okay, Matt, I threw this topic at you. You like it. Give me a little background about you and Landus, and then we're going to talk about consolidation from your eyes.
Yeah, thanks, Damian. Well, I'm from Iowa originally. My family still farms just west of Des Moines, and I've spent some my professional career outside of when I left the farm, went to college. Spent some time as an intern at Becker Underwood, American Cyanamid, to become BSF, and on through the ranks to where I think one of your sponsors I worked for at Truterra. And now I'm here at Landus, which you teed that up really well. Over 5,500 farmers that own us, around $2.5 billion in volume that we do. And agronomy, grain, soy processing, services, technology. You're watching this, and I'm filming this today in our innovation connector, where we bring hundreds of farmers through a year, and various industry and community leaders through here too. So we do a little bit of everything here, all in the favor of the farmer, which is why I love your topic today. So
you talk about consolidate, and we're going to hear consolidate. We'll go with your sweet spot about the ag retail consolidation if you want to go there first, but we can go through the whole value chain real quickly. How many outlets? You're an Iowa based, but you've got actual units, stores, locations, if you will, in more than one state, right?
Yeah, we covered today about 30. We're in about 34 states, 16 countries, and we've got about 60 different facilities across that geography, mostly concentrated here in Iowa.
Yep. So ag retail. You also worked for Ag Chem, American Cyanamid as a former DuPont intern, and we're talking clear back to 1991. I always wanted to, if I was going to be at Ag Chem, I thought, man, I think I'd like to be with American Cyanamid. They gave them real generous expense accounts. The reps seemed to golf a lot and drink a lot, which I thought would be fun. And it is fun, actually. And then also they had the best product names, like what, Scepter. I mean, they like when you bought an American Cyanamid but jug of herbicide, you felt like you were going out in the field like in an F-16 and you're gonna tear some shit up. I mean, they had marketing. They were a good marketing company.
Well, there was that, and I was an intern with them. I think it was in '94 to '96. Was with them full time from '96 through the acquisition of BSF. But some of those times are true, Damian. And then technology changed. And then it wasn't so good. So, it's all relative. DuPont was kind of steady through the whole thing. AmSci had a peak and a valley and a heck of a ride there. And I had more of the tougher ride than I did the great days you speak of. So I'll let you balance that.
Which thing do you want to, where within agriculture do you want to begin on consolidation? At the farm level, manufacturer, using chemistry as an example, retailer, machinery? Just tell me a place, because you worked for Helena, you worked for Tratera, you've had American Cyanamid, now you're in the cooperative ag retail space. Obviously, you know about farming, you're still tied to it. Where do you want to start on consolidation? And we'll talk about it at that level and then move on.
Yeah, let's just start with the farmer, because that's kind of an interesting place to start, because you would think most consolidation would be in the benefit of the farmer. And I think we'll have some interesting debates as we get further away from the farmer. So let's start with the farmer. How's that?
Okay, so I made the point, and I wrote this in my book, Food Fear, which is really mistitled. I should have called it the past and future of global and North American agriculture. And, there is this thing, and my listeners, Matt, keep up with this. Oh, those big farms are squeezing out those little farms. Oh, you can't just make it a small farm. I just had a guy last year ask me. He's a suburban guy here in Phoenix where I live in the wintertime. He says, Damian, can a small farmer make it anymore? And I said, what the hell does that mean? I mean, seriously, I'm not being mean, but what does that tell me? Define that. What's small? Make it. What's make it? Well, earn a living. I'm like, well, there's lots of large farms that don't actually have a net profit. So it becomes a convoluted discussion with, shall I say, a lot of, I won't say misinformation, but passionate misunderstanding. So at the farm level, we've been consolidating since the 1930s, and that's much due to automation, mechanization. We still had people and unfortunately, working with horses in the beginning of the 1930s. Then we had the Dust Bowl. We had a plummeting ag economy. It was the beginning of pretty big consolidation. So you take me from there about the farm level consolidation. The point I'm making is it's been going on for longer than any person listening to this has been alive.
I think you said it really well. I mean, what does what mean? So I'm going to maybe take a more simple approach, Damian. I mean, at the end of the day, if a farmer's farming it, that's a great day for agriculture. Where it gets tough is when you get countries coming in and buying land. You get businesses coming in and buying up a lot of land, and that creates a tough environment for our farmers. There's no doubt about it. And I like to look at it even on a more simplistic level of what are we doing to help the farmer of any size, whether it's a hobby farmer to our largest farmer that has his sons and spouse and everybody involved. What are we doing to help them? What really is driving that? We can sit here and beat it up. Well, there's a reason some of this stuff is going on, right? There's openings, there's cracks in that. So do I think we're going to stop consolidation at the farmer level? No, and I think it'd be wrong to do that. But for goodness sakes, we need to be really careful about who we're letting buy our land, how we're letting that happen. And the best example I can give you is the livestock industry. I mean, think about how many people in the Midwest used to raise hogs or swine independently. And today in Iowa, I think it's less than 20, maybe way less than 20. I mean, that was a statistic I had not that long ago, and it's probably lower yet. We're not going back. I mean, that day is done and sailed. So when I stay up at night worried about consolidation at the farm level, it's about what's going to happen to the acres. and who owns them and how does that play. And if we can keep that farmer owned of whatever size and scale, I don't really care. But it's when it starts moving from that you and I both know bad things happen.
Okay, so you talked about foreign ownership. I did an episode about this. So if you're listening to this and you're not a regular listener, you can go back just within the last month and a half, with the last couple of months. It's within 300. I'll dig up which episode number, but it's within the 330s or 340s episode number. The point is, we actually have a little more concern about that than reality. Right now.
Correct.
China would love to come over. Chinese citizens with money would love to buy acres, mostly because it's a safer haven than buying real estate in China, if you can even buy real estate in China, which is plummeting right now. Wall Street article about that very topic, which I'll be covering in the future. But you talk about another thing, as long as it's American business entities owning this stuff. Now, yes, there is some foreign land ownership. Much of it's German, the Netherlands, and Canada, which are completely friendly countries to the United States. So I don't perceive a threat there. But let's talk about the consolidation to farm level that you just also mentioned about the hog thing. Yeah, up and down every county road where you and I were raised in two different states, Indiana, Iowa, there was a grain farmer that also had 3 dozen sows, and it was farrow to finish. They 4 dozen sows, whatever it was, 10 dozen. They name the number, and then they also fed pigs, and they had a pig finishing operation. That was every single. I'm not kidding. Almost every single farming operation, and then that's all changed. The 1990s, pigs went to 7 cents a pound. It cost you more to drive them to the processing facility than the hog was going to fetch. Hogs go to 7 cents, and then what comes out of that is consolidation, which of course points my thing out. Every time the ag economy falters or declines, the answer is consolidation. So hogs are the best example that we've just brought up here that began late, basically 1997, 8, 9, I think, was the fallout in the hogs. And the answer is, by now, almost no hogs on a level of scale are produced in that same model you and I just talked about that we saw growing up, where the guy farms 500 acres and also has a farrowing barn and a finishing barn or two. Almost none of the pigs that are at the grocery store in styrofoam packages as pork chops were raised that way. Now it's a very vertically integrated, consolidated industry. I've worked for many of them, New Farm and Wakefield Pork and Heimerls in Ohio and Holden's up in Minnesota have all been clients of mine, speaking clients of mine, where they bring me in. I talk to their contract growers. The contract grower is a farming entity that then also has 1, 2, 4 hog barns that they raise hogs on a contractual basis. That is a very good illustration of what consolidation has done. I think there's 50 hog producers that in the United States that grow the bulk of all the pork. Maybe it's 100, whatever. The point is, it's very few, and those are the vertically integrated companies. The consolidation, the limitation there is you almost still don't fix the price. You still don't command any more price at the grocery store. All you've done is gotten bigger and made it your economies of scale created so that you have cheaper acquisition of inputs.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, if you put the farmer in the center of it, and I know you talk a lot about the environment in that. Now the big thing is it's got to be vertical or diversity, right? And there needs to be all these animals on the land as well. Well, I mean, just take our 2 states of Indiana and Iowa. I mean, if you put an animal, a herd of any kind of livestock, we'll say cattle and swine on every acre, that'd probably feed more than the world. Yeah. I mean, so, we got to put reality to this of what really is needed here and how do we become successful? And I think you're saying it right. When the farmer's at the center of this discussion, is that vertical integration that's occurred in swine, has that helped? Has it hurt? I don't know, but now you take it into all the other areas this gets talked about, and good luck.
Okay, so here's what consolidation has done, using hogs as an example from my perspective. It's made it so that as much as we remember all those guys that had the farm operations that had a smaller farrowing and finishing operation, they also had years that they went bust. I mean, obviously using the late 90s as an example. I mean, there are people that got really stung. hard. There's some folks that I remember I knew a farmer, he says, God, the best thing I ever did, I had to retrofit and redo this barn. And I said, okay, this is my last batch. I'm going to sell off every pig I've got. And then I'm going to spend 6 to 12 months getting things retooled before I hog up again. He said, my timing was just nothing but luck, but I sold and made a profit. And then the bust happened. And I said, I'm not going to spend a dime. I'm out of the hog business. So there, as much as we remember that, let's not pretend it was somehow good. There was also some bad times for those people that had that. What consolidation in this level has done is it has, Matt, created many of these contract growers. They've got just stability. They have stability. They get paid per pig per day to grow them on a contract. So this removed some risk for them, and it's given them a cash flow job they can count on. So that's one of the benefits of that
for sure
consolidation.
100%. And you know, and then that's where, you know, the topic of consolidation, there's good, there's bad. And to the question that person asked you, you know, there's always a person's view of it. But, you know, in the end, there's good and there's bad. And look at the hog price today, is sticking on that topic for some odd reason. It's not like that's that great. You know,
and that's where I want to get to the limitation of it. That, okay, we've consolidated. Like I said, I'm not a hog expert, but I've worked in the industry well enough to tell you that basically less than 100 owners of these vertical integrated hog producers produce almost all the pigs that are produced in the United States of America, right? So we've consolidated down to where you're talking about, you could fit them you couldn't fit them in a gym. You could fit them on the damn basketball. You could fit them on half court of a basketball, and you'd have almost all the hogs produced in the United States of America. The number of people that do that or that are responsible for that, entities, could stand in between the half court line and the basket. So you're talking about a very small number of people, okay? Or entities. And so the thing is, it accomplished the goal of paring down expenses. They buy feed as cheaply as anybody. When you're only, when you're that big, when you represent, 100,000 sows and, my friend, Rob Brenneman. When you talk about, producing 1.2 million pigs a year, you're buying the medicine as cheaply as it can be bought. You're buying the gates as cheaply as they can be bought. You're buying all of your inputs and infrastructure costs are as cheaply acquired as possible. But what did you not do? You didn't change the price of the pork chop. You didn't increase the demand for pork chops. That's the limitation.
Well, and now you got me going, Damian. So this is your fault, okay? So take responsibility for it if you would. But so now you look and you go into the meat counter. I mean, how do we do a better job of helping the consumer understand the value of pork? I mean, today you can buy a pork chop, per pound for a few bucks. Compare that to any other item in the meat counter. I mean, heck, a good ribeye might be 20, 25 bucks. So how do we do a better job of helping that industry?
Okay, you're doing that thing.
This is your fault, Damian. So take responsibility. You went there.
I don't mind going there. Hey, I got to pay a couple bills. And to do that, I'm going to tell you about my friends at Redox. They're one of my sponsors here. Redox Bionutrients is a family business with products for ag and turf. Darren Moon began this company 30 years ago. This is not tech-funded biological startup crap. This is a company that's been around for 30 years. He looked around at specialty crop and said, I think we can do a better job and get people off of some of these traditional synthetic fertilizers. So they use a carbon-based technology. Redox Bionutrients provides superior nutrition, abiotic stress defense, root growth, soil health, and efficient nutrient uptake. That is their entire mission. They started in specialty crop, worked into turf, and now they're going more and more broad acre. You should really check them out. You could utilize their products in your fields. That's right. Right there in the Midwest where me and Matt are from, and you can use their products. You'll get big benefits from it. Go to redoxgrows.com to learn more. Redox, REDOX grows.com. Okay, you're conflating a little bit, or shall I say you're introducing a topic. You're talking about that we need to do this for consumer. Well, pork consumption has been around 50 pounds, 52 pounds, 49 to 52 pounds per American per year, probably for about our lifetime, probably for the last half century. So the idea that we're going to, again, consolidation hasn't made us want to eat more pork. Pork, the other white meat, your commercials, was actually a terrible one because it was like saying, hey, we're just like chicken, but we're 2 times as expensive. So anyway, consolidation at the production level pared down expenses, made it probably so you can control more. Now all of a sudden, it made it so that you can get a contract with Tyson, so you know that your hogs are already priced 6 months, 12 months in advance. They're going to have a slot at the Logansport processing facility in Indiana. They're going to go there and they're going to get killed and slaughtered. It's done all that, but it didn't make the American consumer want to buy more pork chops. So consolidation is limitation number one. It does not do anything on the demand side. All it does is control cost, maybe, or control processing and make things more timely and efficient at that level.
No, I think that's really well said. And as we move up through the supply chain, you see that. Absolutely, consolidation has gotten people bigger, and definitely, to your opening comments, drives economies of scale. There's no doubt about it. Landus is a great example of that. I mean, we're a company made up of over 30 different mergers over time. Today, our rail infrastructure is unmatched in the state of Iowa and one of the biggest across the Midwest and across North America. But if we don't stop, in my mind, and so I'm moving up a level here for you. And if you don't want to, just tell me, Damian.
No, you're fine. So you're going to the retail level.
We're going to the retailer now. What we saw is, we needed that period of consolidation, right? And my predecessors put all that in motion to get the economies of scale. When I came in, we're like, okay, every farmer was really clear with me that I spoke to before the job and after taking this job. Why don't we stop merging? Why don't we do something positive for the farmer here? Okay, point well taken. What I'm really proud about what we've done and what I see others struggling with is, once you get on that addiction, if I can call it that, of merging, you can't stop. Your P&L's messed up. You got to keep doing, and market share somehow pays a bill for you. But we never do anything really changing for the farmer. Since we put Landus together, we've not had one merger since. There's none on our books and none that we're discussing today. We've been very clear that it would take something really unique and special to be able to do that. Because what we're now doing is something like you see me sitting in, where we're helping the farmer lean into the future to look at what can they do? How can they do it better? We're having discussions on how we take links out of the supply chain. We have an office in Guadalajara where we're now taking the grain right from Iowa through our rail system on our own leased unit trains down to Mexico and supplying that market beyond feed mills, beyond ethanol plants, things that are actually driving value and improving price for the farmer. Now, do we have to watch the economies of scale of Landus? Well, sure we do. If we can't grow that business at a rate that allows us to stay in that upper echelon like we are today, that'll be a problem. But I tend to see right now that farmers are gravitating to what we're doing, and as you know, Damian, Landus didn't have the best reputation X years ago, a bunch of mergers, weren't listening to the farmer, cutting locations, all the stuff that we get beat up for. But now they're seeing a different day where we are truly focused on them and how we can help them get better prices, do things that lead them into the future to tackle these challenges that you talk about all the time, quite honestly.
What about, there's a reality about consolidation. Like I said, we talk about the farm world. It's been going on since the 1930s.
Yep.
In North America. I can't speak for what's going on in Australia, but I'm guessing it's probably not too dissimilar of a story. But in Europe, whatever. But the thing that I'm going to make point is here is at the retail level, you have to be of a certain size to serve. Landus has to be. If you were still, I don't go to the Roanoke elevator in Roanoke, Indiana, which is an old tin abandoned building now that 50 years ago it worked.
Yeah.
It doesn't work anymore. You have to be a certain size to serve, to be able to get products for your customers that you're buying as cheap as they could be coming to you from the manufacturer, so that you can put your points on it, your margin on it to keep the lights on at Landus and then pass it on. You've got to be a certain size to even exist in the marketplace competitively and then do a good job for your customers. We get that. The other part of it is, once you get big enough, then you start to do, like you said, we're putting in an innovation center that is a learning center. You're doing more value added versus just getting bigger, which is good. That's a growth away from commodity mindset.
Right.
The tough part is Tough part is at the retailer level, you're consolidating, getting larger, and so is like the cooperative in my part of the world. Series got bought by the one out of Indianapolis. Then now they're going to be called Keystone, whatever. At some point, what more do you do? You're not. Are we going to get to where there's 2 ag retailers in all of the globe? I mean, that doesn't seem plausible to me. So what's the next thing? You're saying, oh, we'll never need to get any bigger. Well, the 300-acre farmer said that in 1930 also. We'll never need to be any bigger. What's next?
Well, you're 100% over the target, Damian. I mean, there's 2 things. So one way to say what you said, if I could paraphrase it, is how do you grow your business as an ag retailer?
Yeah.
So when you don't keep up with growth at the farmer level, then you have to consolidate. And that's a problem that existed back in. I'm not doing the things to attract enough farmers to my business to grow it. So I take the easy route and I consolidate. Sometimes that works. Like I said, you got to have an element of the number of rail spurs or the number of agronomy facilities, whatever it is.
Right.
So your point is right there. How do you grow? And if you're doing what's right for the farmer, willing to expand your geographical coverage, willing to really dissect down to what the farmer needs and not be everything to everyone, you can win that. And you could also say, because you're going to correct me here in a minute, that's called customer segmentation. You are correct. You just got to do your job. A co-op cannot be everything to everyone. Right. We are at Landus what we are. We fit a certain segment or 2 or 3 of our population, but not all 4 or 5 of those segments. We're okay with that. But you got to get back, I think we as an industry, what does the farmer need? You see it today. I don't remember the statistics, but it's staggering, the life cycle of a business on Wall Street. Like it is shocking how few years the average business survives. And I want to say it was like less than 10 years. I mean, think about that. That is code for people in my seat aren't doing our job.
Right.
Do what's right for your customers, in our case, farmers. Let them help you grow the business. Let them spread the word to Indiana, to Illinois, to Nebraska, and drive that. So I think you're really bringing up a good thought
here. Let me go with the thought here.
Are you gonna like get me irate about something else now?
Probably
Damian,
not. Maybe, but you never know. It's an easy. You're an easy one to instigate. So here's the thing, and I'm kind of excited about myself. All right, so answer me this, and we don't know the answer. That's why it's a contemplation, not there's not like a math where there's only one right answer.
Right.
We know that the farm size is increasing, and we know that, as I already stated, if once you're in our part of the world, let's say, if you're in the corn belt type of a farmer, and if you're in broad acre commodity production, if you're in corn, soy, and wheat, whatever, 2,000 acres operated up to 20, there's a lot in that range. Then there's a lot that are, and by the way, if you're a 2,000 acre corn and soybean farmer, you're not in that top 5% of revenue and of generation of ag sales, if you will. But you're definitely in that top 10%. So we've got so much of production. I said 75% of ag sales are done by 5% of the farms. Once you get to 10% of the farms, look at the stats, and you can pull this up from the National Ag Statistics Service. Once you get to the top 10% of farms in terms of sales volume of, crops sold, or beef or dairy or whatever, you've got like 93% of all production happening at the within 10 or 12% of the farms. Did they get to where they're consolidating? Let's say they consolidate down again. That they become in the next 5 years. They team up, they pair up, whatever happens.
Yep.
Now you're talking about 6 or 8% of the farms controlling 90% plus of all of the sales of 90% of the revenue and ag. Do they need ag retailers, or do they get to where they're consolidated as producers where they bypass you?
Gosh dang it, Damian. See, you are going to do this to me, aren't you? You know where I stand on this. But I got to tell you, you're going to see us really start focusing on asset light models. Because here's what I can tell you. The farmer will always get it right. and they're having meetings with themselves, with larger groups. They're in chats. They're watching your program.
Yeah.
And they're going to figure this out. And so if we don't find a way to better serve, some of them have their own agronomists.
Yeah.
They can pick product up at the river. They can drop product off at some point. They got, in some cases, all winter to haul grain.
And by the way, if you're listening to this and you're in a cranberry business, or I've got investor people that aren't, when he says pick up product the river, meaning they might be able to handle distribution themselves that comes up the Mississippi or even comes in to a train depot. If you're a large scale producer, farmer, your need for an ag retailer to go and pick up a jug of something is not what it may have been 30 years ago, because you're picking up literally semi-loads of things. And that's kind of what Matt's talking about. So the larger scale producer is already relieving ag retail channels of what they were doing a decade or two ago.
I need you to travel with me, Damian, as a translator. That was beautiful, by the way. So what we believe here at Landus is we can't be focused on mergers and those things.
Right.
We have got to be focused at whatever cost it is. In fact, I got a supplier coming in today that wants to meet with me, and we got to talk about this asset light model and, and how it throws the industry in turmoil. And hopefully this doesn't come out before they show up, because I'm going to ruin the meeting from right here with your audience.
So industry
I don't
light,
get to decide this.
What do you mean?
Farmer
When you
that
say
decides that.
Does industry light just mean that you're not a warehouse? You're not deploying capital to just hold a bunch of stuff, because at 9% interest, 7% interest, that stuff. So is that what you're talking about? That your role can't just be a warehouse with a whole shitload of inventory sitting in it anymore because of the cost of carry?
And equipment and people and semis. And it is a asset light model that allows us to be more price competitive. That farmer that has the semis, that has the applicators, that has the agronomists, that just wants us to be more user friendly. Let them place product in the middle of the night when they're up and can't sleep because price is down. Let them put a grain contract in and they can sign it on the app when they can't sleep at night, or at noontime when they're on a phone call with their cattle buyer, or whatever the case may be. We've got to meet them where they're at. And our industry keeps going, God, let's just hold on to the 1980s and 90s. Well, you know what? I'm going to talk about livestock in a positive way. They've moved on. Mm-hmm. We have to at all levels as well.
Yeah.
And the consumer is screaming. I know we don't want to go that far, Damian, so I'm not, but it's no longer about what I want. It's what does the consumer want that we're selling that grain to, and how did they want it produced? I hate the topic, and I know you get itchy skin on it, but I don't get to write that rule. You have to serve the farmer and connect them to that end consumer, whoever that may be. More than likely, it's a family in some metropolitan area.
Yeah.
So good. Take that, Damian, and run with that night.
I'm going to throw another question at you, because I want to make sure that we stay on our track here about the limitations of consolidation. Because I know that there's people, and I'm not being mean, but the bib overall wearing Bubba that in agriculture bitches about big farmers doing this, and I've been hearing this my whole life. I've been hearing in my whole career. I oftentimes reference that we milked 60 cows, and I'm rent my farm ground now to a guy that milks 2,700 cows or 2,600 cows. It is, consolidation is happening, and it's ridiculous to work against that. When the gentleman from the suburbs that I was talking to last year, can a small farmer make his name? I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Could they 1930? No, they didn't.
Right.
Let me tell you about John Steinbeck's book, The Grapes of Wrath. A bunch of those people were trying to be in it. Let me tell you about the 1980s when a lot of small farmers sure as hell didn't make it. I watched the sheriff sales and the auctions going on in Huntington County, Indiana, and so did you, and you're part of Iowa. So that's a ridiculous question. So we already know the consolidation is happening, but as far as the limitation, I've got one that I think is right in your thing. What you really talked about with serving the farmer, many of them don't need the traditional services that a retailer or cooperative provided. They have a bit more power. With consolidation, when I go from farming 300 acres to, like Grandpa did, to I'm farming 10,000, I have more power. I have more control. And what I mean is I get the current version of the American cyanamide sales rep which would be a BASF sales rep at this point, right? They come directly to my farm. I get seed companies that are willing to really cut me a good deal for my acres, for my seed. I get a lot more attention. I have a lot more power when I'm a large-scale consolidated farmer. You see that, right?
What we do, and it creates disruption in that supply chain, from a manufacturer to a distributor to a retailer. I mean, and then to a farmer. So let's go through that before you translate for me, one step at a time, Damian. So somebody makes a product, sells it to a distributor, who then sells it to a retailer, who then finally gets it to a farmer. Mm-hmm. You tell me what the likelihood of that surviving is under the farmers that you're talking about, the farmers of tomorrow. And I don't care what size they are, because some farmers are really leaning into the future and may not be that mega farmer or large scale farmer, but somebody that these companies like to talk to, where that manufacturer sends a rep out and goes, tell us what you're doing here. Well, the product that you just talked about, how is that replacing synthetic fertilizer? Those are the questions that are going on. And we have to, as the trusted advisor, maintain that role. And our job is to shorten up that supply chain so we don't keep living in the 80s and 90s going, God, I can't. I'm wondering why we're not competitive when it goes through all those hands, all those profits, and the farmer's going, I'm paying how much for a chemical now or a fertilizer? I mean, you get it.
Yeah, I think there's still room for consolidation. To be honest with you, right now in the year 2024, Matt, I don't see it so much at the retail level. There's, every little town in our part of the world had an elevator that did grain and then also sold product for crop inputs and feed generally, because there was every farm had some hogs or some beef cattle on it or mini dairies, whatever in my part of the world.
Right.
So I don't think that we need less facilities, probably too much. We're already right now, but I can see there a consolidation, too many hands touching a product between manufacturer and farm. I don't think you're the problem. Like I said, I think it's above you and below the manufacturer.
I do agree with you. I just want to be on this side of it. Landus has an obligation that based on the ownership of us, which is over 5,500 farmers across many states, several countries. We have to be the voice of that, because obviously people aren't listening. And, we're very loud about that, this isn't about buddies and college and internships. This is about agriculture, starting with the farmer and feeding, fueling, clothing this large world that you have on so many of these guests on. And it's not that I like it, but it's that I've got to sustain that to keep our part of the channel alive.
Well, I think that you're going to be, by the way, I want to talk about one of your former employers. Years ago, I spoke at a Land O'Lakes Sustain conference, and sort of that has spurred into this offshoot of Land O'Lakes, a subsidiary, if you will, called Truterra. Truterra is a sponsor of my podcast, and they're also a company that can help you make money off of acres, maybe doing things you're already doing. If you would consider putting cover crops on, strip till, reduced till, things like that are good for your soil, good for your bottom line, because you're using less soil and you're also, less diesel, should say, less time, and you're also improving your land asset. Well, what if you could also get paid for that? That's where Truterra comes in. Truterra can help you with sustainability programs that pay. You could be picking up money in addition to your crops off of those acres that you farm. Go to TruterraAg.com, TruterraAg.com to learn more. Okay, talk about consolidation. We talked about the farm level at the retail level, manufacturer. I'm going to throw out another limitation that I think when I think about manufacturing. I was a DuPont intern back in the old days. You talk about American Cyanamid. We went from 6 big chemical companies. The last ag downturn, 2014, we had record agricultural revenue income. Farm income was at an all-time high between like 2005, 2013. One blip year, 2014, and ag runs for the door saying, oh my God, we got to consolidate because we're all going to die. Ag freaks out and just decides, like the very inkling of income going down in agriculture, they think, got to get bigger. Is that not been the story? So in 2014, 6 chemical companies became 4, like overnight. Dow and DuPont merged, and Bayer and Monsanto.
Yep.
It happened like that as soon as we heard this. So if we're now looking at an ag downturn, do the 4 become 2? Do the tier 2 ag chemical companies, I'm not being any way mean, I'm saying there's the 4 great bigs and then the 4 after them. And then that I would put like the FMCs and those types of companies.
Yep.
Do those pair up and now we get the top 8 become 3? What the hell happens at the consolidation level of the manufacturers? Machinery. Man, we've already got between John Deere and Case New Holland, which again, they consolidated. Case and New Holland.
Yep.
Mergers and acquisitions act as consolidation. Where can we consolidate any more at the manufacturer level in agriculture?
Well, I unfortunately, I think the answer is we're going to. I'm scared about that. But I'll add one more statistic to you. How many of those companies you mentioned on the seed chem side are U.S. based? Damien, you know that number?
Yeah.
Of the majors.
Yeah. The Corteva.
Corteva.
That's it. One of the big 4.
It's one of the majors.
Of the majors.
Now think about that.
Right.
I mean, not only did what you said happen, but we've also got some of them in different parts of the country, some in friendly territory, some that our government might say, I don't know, I don't care. Yeah. But not only do we have consolidation, we've got country influences and the way they think it should go to market and the way they see sustainability and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I don't get paid to judge that. Right. But I do get paid on your podcast because I'm sure going to send me part of these. Things you've been promoting. I'll get a cut of that, right?
The check's already in the mail.
I'll bet it is, my friend.
So you're concerned about consolidation, and you brought it up a couple of times. You talked about the land and international. You're concerned about, I believe, the autonomy of United States agriculture when there's foreign ownership, and then you talked about it from the land. We should also, we've covered pork as an example of consolidation. We should also point out that the nation's largest pork producing company, Smithfield, is China owned by, what is it called, WC?
That's right.
The holding company. And now you're talking about from a chem and genetic standpoint. Bayer and BASF are European companies, German to be exact, and we're fine. We love working with those folks, but they're, and then Syngenta's China owned, which is frightening. So what your point here is, not that the products are going to be a problem, but what? How does consolidation of those being international non-American companies, how does that threaten us or concern you?
Well, it concerns in 2 phases for me. One is workforce. We do need to put a lot of people to work here in this country, and that's kind of a big thing. And I'm proud of that. I want to see as much here as we can. And then there's, the thing of taxes all going the way it should, that whole piece of country. Yep. But the other pieces you mentioned, some of them are European owned. I think we all would agree how a European country sees sustainability and those topics is different than the United States. I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong.
Yeah.
But what
you're seeing it right now, Matt, on the situation with the European Union's edicts on environmental and emissions, and then some of the individual countries, in particular the Netherlands and it looks like France, really hammering down on the ag sector. So there is a concern that, yes, it almost looks like they're out to eliminate agriculture, yet 2 of the major global companies that provide genetics and or herbicide and technology for agricultural inputs are there. What about consolidation and this is one thing that I have considered. You talk about power. A 10,000 acre farmer has more power to buy, has more buying power, has more pricing power, has more control over a lot of things. What about consolidation of equipment dealerships? And I've thought about this a lot, and I've worked for them. The manufacturers don't want you to have one John Deere store in Huntington, Indiana. They want you to be part of an ownership group that has a dozen. Yeah. Well, eventually, as the manufacturers continue to enforce consolidation, they are forcing and enforcing consolidation, maybe making you sell to, whatever. It seems to me if one owner has every equipment dealership, call it John Deere, call it Case New Holland, call it whichever ones you want, AGCO. If you have the entire corn belt under 2 owners, you talk about power. When then the manufacturer, when AGCO says, hey, you're going to do this, they might say, yeah, you know what, you go pound sand. we're in charge of all the dealerships in 4 states. We'll tell you how it's going to be. Am I wrong that could be a future?
Well, I mean, I'm not in that segment as much, but yeah, I think they all kind of tie out that, consolidation again could create greater technology on equipment, greater technology in seed. You could open up markets that we could sell into other countries, but there's also the other pieces that we're talking about. How does that affect a rural community? How does that affect a farmer that today can go to get a part, or let's talk about when we were growing up, where you go get a part 7 minutes away, and you're back and putting it on in a matter of less than an hour. Or today, it might have to be shipped in. It might have to be, you have to go 2 hours away to get that part. So when we at Landus think about, what the cause and effects are these on our rural communities, and what does that mean to our farmers? It's okay to go, well, my hometown of Bagley, Iowa, there are not many people there anymore. And there's, I think, 1, maybe 2 businesses that aren't really probably that related to agriculture. But what do the farmers, our family farm included, have to do to survive? How far do they have to go? How do they feed? How do they fuel their operation?
Right.
And that's all part of this, whether it's equipment or other, and including ag retail.
I'll throw another one at you because you have a ag chem and background. I am convinced, and it doesn't have to be chem, it could be anything. I'm convinced that consolidation's limitation also is innovation. It doesn't do as good of a job of it. My buddy works for Google, and everybody thinks Google's brilliant. He might be a little more frank with you and say, no, we had one really good idea. The idea that these massive organizations, which come about through consolidation in agriculture, whether it's on genetics or, pesticide, herbicide, fungicide, equipment, the large equipment companies didn't develop the best new data collection. They bought it. So if there is a limitation, I think, in these massively big companies that arise through consolidation, that they lose an innovative edge. They become commodity mindset. Let's just be bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. As we think about, all of that, it's got to come back. I'm sitting here in this innovation connector, and we did this partly to make sure that these companies mostly are people that are in a shop of a few people, maybe in a basement, that they don't have to sell out to that major company, that we can give them a format to test this, to connect with the farmer directly, to get feedback from the farmer, and help that remain a true product that can actually be delivered directly to a farmer and value. One of the products here is TerraClear. It's a rock picker that you put in front of any skid steer, and I would guess a lot of equipment companies probably like that because like I know, there's 2 horrible jobs on the farm: pressure washing and rock picking. Neither anybody wants to do, right? And they found a solution that today there has to be a human in it. Tomorrow or in the near future, they'll do it autonomous. They fly a fixed wing drone, map the rocks. The machine can go out and pick it up. Today, a driver takes it to the rocks that have been mapped. Without Landus, and this is self-righteous because I think they would absolutely have been just fine without us, but there's no doubt they've been a part of our connector for everyone since we started 3 years ago, and will be well into the future. And they get a format here to see that. So, I pull it back to ag retail. We've got to do our job. We've got to help these folks connect so they don't have to sell out and have a path to that farmer directly. And the farmer wins in price, the inventor wins in margin, and everybody can go on for years to come.
So your point is that consolidation doesn't stymie innovation. By a large company can buy it and give a platform for it. Is that your position? You kind of politicked me there, Matt. You kind of went off and did a political answer.
Well, gosh darn it, I got to tell you the answer is the way it is. But sure, I mean, I think what we want to see is these inventors not have to sell out.
Yeah, right.
That they can find a path to that farmer, because then the farmer's probably going to buy that at a little less cost or more of a cost reduction than had a big company had it. That doesn't mean that they don't want to sell out. TerraClear someday may not, or may want to sell out and get rich. That's their prerogative, but they sure have survived for several years now, doing some amazing things, and our farmers are able to buy that attachment at a great price. So actually, the politicking I would say here is, I think that finding a path for our farmers to be able to connect with these small companies, find a way to get those smaller companies and introduced to them, and allow the farmer to reap that benefit and the inventor to reap that benefit, is a very good day for agriculture and invention.
It's a good point, because your point is, if I have the innovation and I just don't have the mustard to get it out there, the only problem, of course, is if the large, huge consolidated company just steals it from me. But the point is that there's a distribution and a ramp up capability that a large organization can provide. All right, get me out of here. Anything else? We talked about consolidation in agriculture. Again, Matt and I are both of the opinion that it's never going to change. I mean, it's going to continue to happen. What else? Closing thoughts. Then you can go.
Yeah, my closing thoughts are, I do believe those that are the trusted advisor of that farmer, from ag retailer to the grain buyer to whatever it is, Dave, my plea is we've got to do our job.
Yep.
We've got to think forward. We've got to get that farmer back in the center and close the distraction of mergers and acquisitions, and really get focused on what do they need, how do we serve them, how do we get them into the future? And it ties out to so many topics you've talked about. I don't care where the company's based. It's you, whatever. Yeah. I can't control that. What I can control is a format that allows the farmer's voice to be in the center and bring those that are attracted to that in whatever way, from whatever country, and create that win for our farmers. That's what's got to happen.
I like it. By the way, that's a customer focus, which is, I've said this about everything. And, we in ag sometimes, Matt, think, oh, we're so different from all other businesses. Well, kind of, but business is business.
Yep.
Is your merger and acquisition, is your growth, is your consolidation to appease a shareholder? Is it which you should, of course, in some regards, or is it to appease the customer, or is it to serve the customer better? And a lot of times you hear about corporate tie-ups. This will be great for our, but what's it do for the consumer? And all of us work for other people's money. And that's the one thing. I work for other people's money. You work, Redox and Truterra and Pattern Ag, the sponsors of my podcast. So I think that's a really good point. Look at the consolidation, say, great, but does this serve our customer? And I think that's what your point is there.
Well, there's no better way to do that than the cooperative system. I'll put a plug in for that.
Oh, for God's sakes, here he goes. Yes, no, that's
but
good.
But it is.
It's customer owned. It's what
the co-op is supposed to be. We need to do our job as Landus and those that are like us. So there you go. Take that and run with it, Dave.
His name's Matt Carstens. He's the CEO of Landus. We're talking about consolidation, the limitations of consolidation, the fact that it's continuing to happen, and also in an agricultural economic downturn, which is what we look like we're going to have here in 2024 and possibly 2025. You'll hear more talk about, should we consolidate and get bigger? Well, remember, there are limitations to getting bigger. And as Matt said, does your consolidation actually serve the customer better? That's what should really be the gauge, because then all of a sudden that means there's a place for you in the future. He's Matt Carstens. I'm Damian Mason. Thanks for being here. Till next time, this is The Business of Agriculture. Well, that concludes another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. This episode was brought to you by Pattern Ag. Everybody in agriculture understands the importance of soil health. We also keep an eye on our soil better than we ever did through advanced soil testing. But what if there was a company that provided predictive analytics, not just checking out nutrients and all the elements that are in there, but also could tell you the degree of risk you face with disease and pest pressure? That's right, Pattern Ag can do that. They actually can tell you, hey, you're going to have a real issue here. You can preemptively, proactively treat for corn rootworm or cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome before the problem actually starts costing you yield. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to find the nearest rep that can help you start doing better for your soil.